When you're doing standing seam roofing, there's two important measurements that you need to know for the panel that you're working with. One of them is the coverage of the panel. So it's center of rib to center of rib. And in this case, it's 16 3/8. The other measurement is from the inside to the outside of the screw flange. And in this case, that's 17 1/4. So those two measurements, 17 1/4, inside to outside, and coverage, 16 3/8, are very important. And you're going to see why as we start installing into the valley. Our second panel hits both the valley and a plumbing vent. So I'm going to show you how to take measures for both. We're going to start with the plumbing vent. What you'll need is a square, a Sharpie, and a tape measure. We're going to be measuring from the bottom up to the pipe, the front of the pipe, the rear of the pipe, and the sides, and then we'll deal with the valley. Using my square, I'm going to come up so that I can mark on this panel, on the already installed panel, where the edge of my pipe is. I'm going to do the same at the rear. I'm always transferring the measurements to this panel because this way I can measure up from the bottom. I'm going to measure the sidewall. And I'm going to do that on both sides, trying to make sure that I'm vertical. And now I have the front, the rear, and the two sides of the pipe. I can take those measurements and I can transfer them to the rear of my second panel and do my cutout. So my first measure is 35 3/4. My second measure is 42, always from the edge of the roof, from the eave. My next measure is 4 3/4. And the other side is 9 1/8. Now that I've taken my measures for the pipe, always making sure to measure from the eave to the pipe, I'm going to transfer those measurements to the back side of the panel. Here they are written out. So my first one is 42 inches, 35 3/4. I'm going to use my square, lining up with the straight edge that I know, the factory edge. The reason I'm transferring these is because I'm actually going to measure from this side of the panel. And then measuring from this side of the panel, I know that the side walls of my pipe are at 4 3/4 inches, 4 3/4, and 9 1/8. I'm doing this so that we get a nice clean cut and a tight fit. I join these lines. We now know that we have our pipe in this center. We can cut it out. As you saw, I transferred the measurements for the pipe to the back of this panel, and I've cut my hole, but we still have to measure for the valley. A quick trick for starting the cut is to use a nail or a punch with a hammer. Just create a small hole, open it, and then your snips will go in quite easily, and you can continue cutting. So now we're going to make our measurements for the valley so that we can hem and cut the panel so that it clips into the offset cleat of the W valley. You can see that I've made two different marks. And this is going back to what I told you before about always knowing those two measurements of your panel. The coverage, which is 16 3/8, and the inside to outside measurement. So using my square, which has already been marked to make it easier, I'm going to figure out where the 17 1/4, where the width of the panel, the widest part of the panel, hits the valley, which is about there. I'm going to make a mark on the panel, and then I'm going to measure the bottom of the pan from here, which is 13 inches. So I know that I have 13 inches and then I have a measurement up to here for 17.25, and the rest of the panel is going to be a full panel. I'm going to transfer those measures to the back of the panel just like I did for the pipe, hem it, and then we can install it. We know that at 6 inches, I've made a mark at 6 inches. We know that at 6 inches is the full width of the panel, which is going to be this entire width. And we know that at the bottom of the panel, we come over 13 inches. And we want to make sure that we have another inch to clip into the cleat. So I'm going to make my mark at 14. Now I'm going to join those lines. So this is my outside point. I'm going to join those lines, make sure that we have enough to clip in to the valley. I'm going to give it an inch. And this inch is for the hem. And I will cut this, and then we can install it. So now that we have this panel finished, we're going to go ahead and install it. There's a couple of things that I want to point out first. One, the hem at the eave, I've opened at 90 degrees because otherwise we can't get the panel into position. So we have the hem open at 90 degrees. We have the hem for our valley cleat folded over, and we have our hole for the pipe. So I'm going to go ahead, get it into position, and we're going to install it into the offset cleat, which it is. Now I'm going to go ahead and snap the panel in place. The panel is now locked into place. We've got our opening for the pipe. We will be installing a pipe boot over top of this. We're hemmed into the eave on the D-style trim, and we have our hem into the offset cleat in the valley. So I'll go ahead and fasten this down, again, every 12 inches on the fasteners, and then we can go ahead and take our measurements for the next panel. Thanks very much for watching, and if you have any questions, please reach out to your All American Steel rep or shoot us a note through social media.